What's going on, Business Gators? We're going to talk today about disruption, about innovation. I'm going to cover disruption. We've been talking about a couple types of disruption. I think it may be getting a few of you confused. And then we're going to move on to a specific type of disruption, the disruptive innovator. Got a quick video for you today. I'm going to get it up as soon as possible for your discussion post. Looking forward to talking about Netflix on Monday. So let's get into it. Okay, so the slide you're seeing up here right now talks about the three types of disruptions that you may have seen talked about in this class. This isn't an operationalization that I have seen out there anywhere. It's what I'm doing to help you guys make sense of the types of disruptions you might see. This first one is what we're going through right now. It is a market disruption. These are things that are caused by some sort of external force. Could be war, could be depression, could be the pandemic we're in right now, could be a recession, anything that really you had absolutely no control over and probably didn't even see coming in many cases. So one thing to understand about this is that in one of these types of disruptions, there are some sectors that are actually stimulated. If you look at war, that often stimulates manufacturing, especially the military infrastructure manufacturing. If you're looking at recessions, well, it's not necessarily that it stimulates a certain area, but there are certain recession-proof types of businesses that are out there. And when you're looking at the pandemic, at least the current pandemic, I'm not aware of how it has happened over history, you'll see that some sectors have actually been stimulated as a result of that. Technology right now, especially video conferencing, is one of those areas that have been stimulated. Another thing to talk about, and this is very interesting from the perspective of supply chain, is how it affects the different supplies that are out there. And I know it's not necessarily a disruption, but it definitely is an issue that's happening. The toilet paper issue. And so if you do a little Googling, you'll find out that there's been an issue finding toilet paper out there. Why? Why now that everyone's already bought all their toilet paper is it still an issue? Well, the supply chains have grown to adjust for certain types of demand. People aren't working in office buildings anymore. So the demand for office type or building or major building MRO, maintenance, repair and operation toilet paper is lessening versus consumer level toilet paper, which is a little softer, which is not as in bulk as you might see elsewhere. That is in higher demand. So it's going to take a little while for the supply chains and the manufacturers to adjust to handle that. And of course, they're going to have to pay attention and make sure that they put it back to normal as various places start going back to normal as well. Market disruptions are a strategic issue. They're an issue that your external view didn't check. So your pestle couldn't predict or wouldn't predict that something was about to happen. The next area is discontinuous products. So this is actually a product development issue, and it's really only a disruption from the consumer's perspective. You're changing the way they do life. So you're looking at a technological disruption that is, again, mostly from the consumer side, and it's a product development issue. How are you staying along with whatever this new evolution happens to be? If you look at cell phones and smartphones, which, again, I'm not going to wade too far into the debate as to whether iPhone itself was a discontinuous product, but when you're looking at it, you can see how the old products became less important. TV to radio, radio to going out. Then we want to talk about disruptive innovators. We've talked a little bit about some of the pieces of this throughout the entire semester. This is a competitive development, and this is a firm and strategic issue that you're going to be working with. So, just a definition here of what a disruptive as to what a disruptive innovator is, or disruptive innovation. It is a process by which a product or service takes root initially in simple applications at the bottom of the market and then moves up the market, eventually displacing established competitors. I know what you're saying. It's right there. Why did I need to read it? What I want to do is take a little bit of a dissection here and look at what we're talking about. Product or service taking root at the bottom of the market. Now, what this means is that it's an underserved area of the market typically. If we look at, for example, Blockbuster, as you're reading it, you're going to start to see how they were going after an underserved market. You have to make sure that you have enough in that underserved market that you can serve them profitably. But what happens is, as you build strength, you become strong enough to be able to take on the competitors. If we look at this graph from one of Christensen's pieces, you can see that you're coming in at the low end of the market, and eventually you'll be able to hit that particular mainstream as the incumbent is focusing on their most profitable customers. That's usually how it happens. You're looking at customers that aren't necessarily served. I suppose if you want to think, how do you compete in this area, you want to look at ways that someone is serving a market that you're not able to serve presently, and keep a very careful eye on them. Okay, so next we want to talk about the three types of innovations that Christensen talks about. The first is a sustaining innovation. These are things that are essentially continuously developing, and so you're looking at the iPhone and the Galaxy as the two dominant players, maybe the Google Pixel as well, in mobile phones. Then you have low-end disruptions. These are going after, again, underserved areas of the market that aren't served by those high-end products. So if you look at the iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy, they're going after people that it's not even the money issue here. It's an issue of some people just don't want all of the bells and whistles that are in those phones. And so the Jitterbug, or whatever their smartphone version of that particular product is, are targeted at these people that don't want complex things. They're overserved, essentially. The new market disruptions, which we'll talk about with Blockbuster, are exactly what Christensen is talking about with a disruptive innovator. They find ways of serving a market that is underserved, that isn't even on the radar of their competitors, and they end up going after it. So again, sustaining innovations, better products that companies can sell for better profits to their best customers. When we're looking at those low-end disruptions, incumbent companies are usually going after higher-end products to go after the more profitable customers, but they want something that's, some customers just want something that's good enough. And of course, the new market disruptions is what we're talking about with disruptive innovations. And that's one of those areas that oftentimes firms are so overlooking that by the time it comes to fruition that they have completely missed the boat on it, they have been left in the dust. We talk about Blockbuster, or we will talk about Blockbuster, but Kodak is another prime example of them. So they owned all the patents on digital photography, but the people who are interested in being served by digital photography were hobbyists. This is not an area that Kodak was necessarily going after. If they were going after hobbyists, they were going after the actual photographers who were artists. Again, a much bigger customer base. So you had a lot of the newer tech companies developing digital cameras way back when, if we can call the 90s way back when, that you really couldn't do much for. Barely could you even get some of this stuff on websites. But with my own memory of those particular situations, I do remember when the first usable digital camera came out. You could stick a floppy disk in it, and so that's when these digital cameras started hitting the mainstream. And by that point in time, the business model for Kodak was not able to compete with these new business models and this new type of technology. Okay, so that is the quick and dirty on the types of disruptions that you can have. It's very, very brief for a video, I know, but in the end, the real meat of this is as we discuss Blockbuster and a few other companies on Monday. By the way, while we're at it, don't forget to keep an eye on the very top page of Canvas for the calendar as it exists. The case is discussed on there, study days are put up on there, as well as the last day of class, the 22nd, which is when your project is due. Make sure you're checking out the files for that. I will be working on a video to help you guys learn how you can connect into the business library so that you can do some of the research that you need to do. The short of that is you need the VPN. If you're not sure of how to use the VPN and you don't want to wait for my video on how to download it, all you have to do is go to vpn.ufl.edu, and that'll usually guide you through an install of that particular VPN. If you have a Mac, it's a little bit trickier. You have to make sure you're using the right version. I found that out the hard way as I was actually looking to do a screen share with some students on this. So if you're not sure, if you're not very technologically adept at getting some of that stuff done, I'll try and get that video to you by Friday. Okay, Gators, again, that's all I've got for you today. Looking forward to our discussion on Monday. Stay safe and be well.